Hello and welcome to the Anatomy of Marriage podcast. I'm your host, Melanie Studley.
Hello, my friends. My name is Seth Studley. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and welcome to the show. Today we have an awesome guest with us, and we've met him a couple of times, gotten to know him, and this is the first time he's been on the show. So welcome, Dr. D, Dr. John Delony. How's it going, man?
So good. How are you guys?
Doing good. Fantastic.
Doing good.
Outstanding.
Yeah. So give us a little bit about who you are for our listeners who may not know who you are, or if they haven't listened to Dave Ramsey's show yet, they definitely don't know who you are. So just give us a quick synopsis of who you are, what you do.
You bet. I'm a dad and a husband, and I recently joined this Dave Ramsey's team as a new personality, working in the mental health and wellness and wholeness and relationship space. And I spent the last almost 2 decades working in colleges and universities as a nerd and a administrator there. And
nice.
So it's fun just to change gears and join this squad.
Yeah, that's awesome. We first met you, although I didn't get to meet you because after your talk, you zipped out of there. And I was like, oh, man, I want to talk to him so bad. We met you in October last year at the influencer event. And like the stuff you were saying, being a therapist myself, I'm like, I met someone in the field who gets it and who knows what they're talking about. And then you ran out, so this is almost
I was weeping. I couldn't handle it right.
Yeah.
It was so good. Your speech at the event was so good. You are a powerful speaker,
so
man.
Thank you so much.
For real.
That
and then we
event,
got to,
yes, that was cool.
I know. And then later I found out that we share a love for anything Filson brand, a love for outdoors, and then to top it all off, the cold dip, the cold water therapy. It's like, I don't know anybody else.
I'm corona free, and I'm attributing it almost entirely to the daily cold bath. So
That's right. Did you take a cold shower this morning?
I didn't. I kind of wimped out today.
Oh man, I was taking my cold shower, and I knew we were going to interview you this morning. I was like, I'm doing it. I have to do it. I'm not going to say.
I was literally eating Mike and Ike's for lunch, and I thought they're going to call me on this, this thing. You know, I'm letting myself down today. That's all right.
Now I like to think of you eating Mike and Ike's being like, I don't have corona. Have corona. I'm so healthy.
Yeah. If you put enough poison in your body, corona's like, dude, I'm out.
It's like an antidote.
Yeah, you edge it out with other things that are bad for you.
You can shove it down with carbs and sugar. It's so good.
Oh, this is a terrible show already.
I know.
We've done a horrible job.
We're endorsing stress eating. So
Yeah, don't do that. No. It's so bad.
Yeah. So talking about stress and anxiety, which we're going to reframe into fear, because that word does get overused, I think. And then if we overuse something, it loses all its meaning, right? It's like saying I love everything. I love snow cones. Like I love you, Melanie. It doesn't have the same value, right? So let's kind of jump into some of the things that we wanted to talk about. And you being in the field as a therapist, as a professor, this is your jam. You know, You're in mental health, you're in crisis work. So we wanted to provide some tips and tools and add some real value to your listeners and to our listeners about what we can do to normalize our new normal, to talk about what's different. How can we weather this? How can marriages weather this? Finances, kids, everything.
For real. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate it. Real quick, I'm not a licensed therapist. I got a PhD in counseling. And I chose the easy way out. I didn't go all the way like you did, so good for you.
Man,
I wanted to teach too.
One on TV.
I thought about like post grad stuff. I was like, 5 years? Do I want to be in school for another 5 years on top of my? No, so I didn't go that route.
Good for you.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
Yeah. So what are you seeing? Like being in the field, what are you seeing some people talk about? Some fears, some stresses that are going on.
I think I'm feeling people get squeezed. We're such a spun out and exhausted and leveraged society with our time and our money and our resources. And I think that we live lives with so little margin that it just takes one thing like this, either psychologically or practically, or we can't skip a paycheck, right? And so, and then the whole thing falls over, right? And so I'm feeling is this general, I've seen on college campus, especially the last decade, where anxiety has just kind of done this, right? Almost a vertical trend line. This isn't that. I think this is actually people scared and saying, oh gosh, what do we do? And I don't have anything in reserves to help. And by the way, I've got to learn to be a co-parent, and I'm going to have to, we're both working from home now, and we're both homeschool professors now. I mean, the whole thing is just different all at the same time. And so seeing people leave their heads a little bit and suddenly have to figure out what in the world do we do now? Oh, and there's no toilet paper, right?
Right. On top of that, well, one thing you said, like leave our heads a little bit. And the thing that because I'm always in my head, and that hasn't been the best place to be all the time, because it inhibits me from like being with Melanie and other people that I love and care about with my heart, because I'm always thinking about the next thing, or what's this deadline, or what do we got to do here, clients there. So this, in fact, has helped me get out of my head and into my heart a little bit, So tell me what you think about that. Mm-hmm. You're pretty good in your heart always, mm-hmm. for the most part, but tell me, like, for people that are in their heads, what do we do? How do we get out of that?
Well, for me personally, just my type of behavioralness, my attitude, my self, whatever, what is the word I'm trying to say? My personality.
You're 7
goodness
on
gracious.
The Enneagram type?
I'm a 7 on the Enneagram. But I think part of it for me is that if I'm in my head all day, which I've done that many times, mm-hmm. I am shutting out my children, and my children are watching me. Mm. And especially now when my children are watching me 24/7, and I'm a homeschool mom all of a sudden of 3 kids, a 12-year-old, 11-year-old, and 7-year-old. I actually cannot be in my head. And one of the things that I learned that was the most powerful tool from Dr. Dan Siegel in his book, I think it was either Mindsight or whatever. He's got a book about Aware. One of them was that when you can, as a parent, literally just voice the things that you're feeling inside your head. Of course, not something freaky or scary or weird. You actually help your children process through their own feelings by modeling that behavior for them. Mm-hmm. And that was really huge for me, because even if I'm like, man, I'm so tired and I don't want to make this coffee, or I don't want to make this, snack or dinner, whatever it is, if I can say that out loud to my children and they go, oh, mom feels tired, but she's still working hard, and she let me know she's tired. So now I can, mm-hmm. it becomes this sort of like domino effect of cognitive awareness that is really, really amazing, and it's really, really beneficial.
But you have to be careful, because you're not going to look at your.
I know, you don't want to
You're not going to look at the kid and say, "I don't want to make this supper right now.
I don't want to make this sandwich for you."
Right.
But I think that's to me something that's really helpful that people don't realize we have the power to do, is share our inner worlds in a way that's helpful, in a way that's engaging and brings about clarity, as mm-hmm. opposed to I'm assuming what Seth thinks, or my kids are assuming what I think or feel. Mm-hmm. If that makes any sense, I don't know.
Yeah, I think it makes great sense. In fact, you said something on the Dave Ramsey show yesterday, John, about I don't remember what it was verbatim, but I'd like you to speak about it again, about the power of not freaking out. And I know that you've been in amazingly stressful crisis situations before with clients, and like being that strong person, not like you have to be this super stoic, immovable force, but being in the moment with that person, and not, I guess, mirroring their fear or craziness or crisis. Well, I can't remember the term, but speak to that a little bit.
Sure. So I'll loop back and kind of touch on something that you just mentioned, Melanie, and then I'll get to where you were, Seth. Mm-hmm. I think we have to remember that we do a lot of living in our own heads, and kids are just one giant sponge. And so we may not want to make the coffee, or we're not going to turn around and say, I don't want to make the coffee, but our kids can feel that all over us, and they internalize it. And if they don't see us make the coffee, or sometimes if we don't verbalize it, sometimes they assume, oh, mom's upset with me, right? And they start trying to figure out ways to solve that, right? Mm-hmm. And that goes over to, like you mentioned, just being with people and their worst of their worst and their lows of their lows. One of the great things I was trained, one of the great statements that has lived with me forever in trauma and crisis response has been, calm is contagious. Mm. And so the way we were trained is if someone says, hey, that student over there is going to kill themselves and we need you immediately, and I freak out and start running down the hallway, then I have just brought my chaos and my fears to an already wild situation. Right? Mm-hmm. And so you'll often see a good crisis counselor smile and start singing and walk slow, almost to the point that it's. I've been in situations where the people around me are unnerved by how calm it is.
Yeah. And
then we get there, and then I do my freaking out at night when I'm home by myself, and then I think, whoa, that was wild, right?
Yeah.
And then when you marry the two, so we had some tornadoes rip through Nashville a few weeks ago, and I knew my son was hearing about it. He's almost 10. He was hearing about it. He was processing it. And so I put him in the truck and we went over there. And I let him see the destruction. I let him, he helped me clear out one of our friends that had lost everything. But I also made sure he saw all the people out there with meals and with chainsaws helping remove limbs. And I kept reminding him, things happen, but look around, people are good. So he got to see and feel and process trauma with his whole body, not just with his frontal lobe. And our bodies are incredible resources for healing us from those things if we get out of our heads and let our whole bodies take it on.
Yeah, and going back to that idea of how you respond in a crisis is how other people are going to respond. That's just basic mirror neurons. You know, like you're mirroring what you. Well, if you're aware of it, first of all, you have to be aware of like what you're feeling, and you have to be in check with your own body before you can go out there and model that. But that's so important, especially in this time when there's a lot of things that we don't know about. It's a new time for so many people. So we've made it a real point to check in with the kids and talk to them about it. Like, hey, you're out of school, but you know, we're going to do super awesome homeschooling. We're going to do all kinds of different things. I'm home more now. And we just make it a point, because one of my favorite sayings, you know, as a parent is more is caught than taught, right? So if those kids can catch our calmness, catch our leadership, catch our mirroring, all of that, catch our response to stuff, then they're going to be able to process whatever they're feeling in their little bodies more calmly. And I think that's one of the greatest things. That's one of the greatest successes that we can do as a parent. It's like, hey, let's model this stuff.
Well, the thing that it makes me think of is, as we're in this times of like, people don't know what's going on, stuff's changing every day. Like, we just got our stay-at-home order. We're not supposed to leave our houses now unless it's like absolutely necessary. So that's weird and feels strange. And it makes me think of, this is going to sound really weird for a minute, but our neighbor's dog is behind a fence. And if it sees our dog, it goes into psychotic mode and it barks and runs and freaks out, right? And that energy of that dog like comes off onto all of us. Our dog freaks out. Our kids go, there's nothing is going on. That dog can't get us.
Dogs that live next door to me too, man.
It's so weird. But it's really crazy because that dog goes crazy and then we all go crazy because we don't know what to do about it. But in the parental role, we're that like lead pack dog. And if we're the ones going crazy, our little litter is going to go crazy too, right? So we need to practice that sort of inside out teaching of, okay, this is how I am a little bit scared, but here's what I know. And here's what science says. And here's what, you know, our neighbor who's a doctor says. And here's what watching videos on how to wash your hands. Like, here's what that says. And so it's a good practice, I think, for parents, especially who have little ones at home right now, is just educate yourself, live inside out with your mind, talk about these things, work them through together, but don't be the crazy pack dog that's freaking everyone else out.
Right. And also, it's important for us to let our kids see us be vulnerable too. And so it's been important for me to sit down with he's 10 and I have a 4-year-old. And so our conversations are different, but I tell my son, I'm kind of nervous. We were in New York City last weekend and I got super sick the other night and I ended up going to get a test myself. And I let him know, hey guys, I'm scared how this is going to come out.
Yeah.
And so then we prayed about it and we talked about it and he got to see how I worked through my fears. And then we celebrated when it came back negative and it was great. And so one of the things that my wife set up for him is a coronavirus diary, like a scrapbook. And we're going to put make a time capsule, if you will, so he can pull it up in 10 years and we'll have newspaper clippings and what made him nervous and what he was excited about. And so I want him to process it as he can as a 10-year-old, right? Which is really different than a 15-year-old and super different than my 4-year-old who's just maniacal, loves everybody at home. But it's going to look different for everybody. But like you say, processing and just remembering that they're watching everything.
Yeah. And that's really important that you brought up the vulnerability piece. Like, we have to model that too.
Absolutely.
You know? And with our different families of origin, we talk about family of origin all of the time on our show. And it's so important that if these things weren't modeled in our family growing up, it's important to unlearn those things and relearn those now. So we do talk about, we talk about mostly everything in front of our kids, finances, some worries, some stress that we have. But the huge difference is we're not putting it on to the kids.
There you go. Right.
We're not putting anything on them. And we make it a real point to make sure to check into them. Hey, buddy. Hey, sis. What are you thinking? How's it going? And they talk. You know, they'll definitely talk. And then that's the chance where we can either reinforce something that they were thinking, like, hey, Dad, I'm kind of scared, but it's okay, right? We're going to be fine. Yeah, buddy. And then we talk about that. Or if they misinterpreted something like, Dad, we don't have any money, or something, whatever little kids can kind of create in their own minds, it's a chance for us to correct that. And it's so important to unlearn stuff that, maybe things weren't modeled in our family the best way. Of course, some things were, but another goal as a parent is to take all the good things from our family of origin, learn from the bad things, and perpetuate and learn and grow and
move forward
in that way. Yeah.
The way I like to think about it is putting a picture in my kid's head. I want him to have a picture of what a sane dad during a crisis looks like, and a picture of what a dad who loves his mom when things are hard looks like, and so that he can live into that later on.
Oh yeah, that's so important. And this may sound weird, but like when I leave for work or come home or whatever, I make sure and like give Melanie a hug or a kiss, right? And I also make sure that the kids see it.
Not in a weird way.
Yeah, of course not.
Pathological. We'll talk off camera.
Right. No. Like, hey, we have a family prayer time. We do this, and then they see me modeling, and they see her modeling too. Like, oh, this is a healthy relationship. Because I guarantee it, if kids believe and perceive and think that their mom and dad, their main caregivers, are healthy, then they're not going to worry about other stuff or have like different maladaptive reactions.
Absolutely.
It
lets them tether into the top of a structure, and they can rappel off the side with a firm foundation, right? They can their adventures growing up and learning.
Yeah, it's something strong.
I like what you said about creating a vision or like a picture for your child to see what a healthy father looks like in a time of crisis. Because I think right now, as people have extra time on their hands. And I think what would be really great, a practice that people could do is sit down and think of this vision for themselves, whether that's a day-to-day routine that they do with their family. Like, for example, we started doing our family, what's the word? It's not a chore list. What is it called?
Like
rules.
Family vision goals.
Like family rules. It's like, be kind, be helpful, be respectful, right? And then on top of that, we do a prayer every morning. We did not used to do that until now. We started doing it because we have to homeschool. I need the kids to be kind. Our pace is slower. We've got the time. And so now I'm able, as a mom, if I'm aware of it, to sit down and go, hey, I can create a vision of how I actually want to be in this season where things are uncertain, because life is always uncertain anyway. So let's have that in our minds before we start, and then teach our kids, again, that sort of inside out learning thing where we're telling them why we're doing these things. And so I don't know, that just came to my head as you were saying that, that idea of creating a vision. So many people don't do that practice, and I think it's really powerful.
I think you're exactly right. I think one of the, and we could talk about this on a whole other interview, one of the main challenges is that we think in pictures and we speak in words. And so I often will sit with my wife, especially in the past, and she would say, I need you to be a better husband. And I would say, we'd have a great conversation. I'd say, you're right, I'm on it. And then that night I would have another adjunct teaching gig. And at 4:45 the next morning, I'd be out of the house and in the gym. And I'd stay out of the kitchen while she was making breakfast. Because my picture of a great husband was someone who made enough money and who had a six-pack, even though I'm old now, and who let her have her space. And her picture of a husband was a dude with kind of a belly who was in sweatpants watching TV with me on the couch. So even though I was trying so hard to meet her, we ended up further apart than when we started. So I've stopped asking, hey, what do you want to do this weekend? And the language in our house is, what's your picture for the Friday night? Picture of this date going to look like? Because she may say like, hey, let's go out Friday night on a Monday. And dude, by the time Friday comes around, I have spun myself up and we're going to end up getting on a plane and going to stay in this crazy hotel. And her picture of Friday night is like, I'm going to have 6 burritos and I'm going to be fed by 9 o'clock.
Right.
And we end up, Friday night comes and we just do this, right?
Yep.
So in this time with our kids, every day, every morning, we're saying, what's the picture of today look like? And we're just mapping it out. My kid, the son's responding to that. My daughter's responding to that. And more importantly, my wife and I are staying connected through this uncertain wacky.
And that's perfect. A couple of months ago, we started doing a very similar thing. Melanie says, hey, what is your expectation for the rest of this day? So we're on the same page because all that stuff that you said, your vision of a perfect husband, get out of the way, all this stuff, that's from family of origin, right? So, if this Saturday, I'm going to go to Home Depot. We're going to do this, I'm going to go over here. I might go hunting later or something like that. Well, that's definitely not in her plan for me, So that's where we get in trouble with each other if our expectations don't line up. So we just simply ask and communicate, hey, what are your expectations of me, for us, for the evening, for the rest of the night?
Or even the next hour. Like, what are we going to do for the next 2 hours? That's a great question to ask. And what I think is interesting is people don't think of simplifying it down to that simple of a level. Like, don't make it complicated. Don't try to be cute about it. Like, I used to hope that Seth would guess what I wanted to do.
Oh, that's the worst, right?
It is the worst. It is the absolute worst. Because I'd be like, I want to have a fun, like, let's go out on Friday. No, I don't tell him where. I don't tell him what I want to do. I don't tell him how long I want to be.
I'm the worst about that. Yes.
Right? And so what was happening, though, was that I was being too proud to tell him. I didn't want to actually say exactly what I wanted, but I wanted him to know exactly what I wanted, which was a recipe for total disaster.
Assumptions, yeah.
Yeah, and I think as he's home more now, there's a little bit of confusion. I wouldn't say it's tension, but it's like, well, he's home. He's going to clean. That's what I would do. Right? And he's like, he literally before this call was like, I'm going to go in our room. I set up an office for myself. I'll see you in 2 hours. And I was like, all right. And he's gone. Like, That's fine. That's okay. I wasn't anticipating that, but now I know. But it's as simple as saying, what does the next hour look like? 3 hours, evening. What does the weekend look like? What exactly do we want to do? And I think, who was it? Chris Hogan said it. But I think it's just like a principle of public speaking where it's clarity is kindness or confusion is unkind or something like that.
Clear is kind. That's right.
Clear is kind. And that's what I thought. When I heard him say that, I thought, that is so beautiful. Like, I've been being unkind to my husband by hoping he could guess what I wanted and not telling him literally on purpose because I wanted to feel like a princess, which is dumb.
Well, and sometimes as husbands, I don't explain everything that I'm planning on doing for the next 2 hours, right? So that I can kind of be like, whoa, I was right. So it goes.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It definitely does.
I'm glad you said that.
So let's give, and we'll wrap this up here a little bit, but let's give listeners some actual real tips. If anything we're saying is resonating with them, and I'll let you go first and then copy what you say so I can sound smart. But, some real tips if people are struggling with this newfound role that we all are in. There's not a single person in the United States that has not been affected by this. So one thing, we're in it all together, but we are going to react and process it different ways. So maybe just a couple of quick tips for our listeners is like, hey, if you're feeling whatever, do this today and you'll feel better.
I love it. So the first thing I would tell you is number one is, and y'all touched on this earlier, you have to make a plan for every day. And I would even go as far as to expect tension for the first 2 or 3 or 4 days as your spouse, as your kids lean up against those new plans to see how firm they are, right? How strong those boundaries hold. And just expect it over the next few days. I would really recommend sitting down with your significant other and just saying the words, here's what the picture of today looks like in my head. What does it look like in your head? And just making sure everybody's on the same page. It's simple and it's easy. And that's everything for, are we going to party after the kids go to bed? Or are we going to, who's making dinner tonight? Like, or you have to leave to go to work? All those things just to make sure we're all on the same page. Then the third thing is I would spend as much effort as possible on the things you can control and let the other things go. What that really means is turn off the computers and turn off the internets and turn off the TVs and just take this magical pause in humanity for a few weeks and just be with one another. And I think we've all been spun out and exhausted for so long. We've all known we're living with no margin. Well, ta-da, here we are, right? So I would just own it for what it is and really work to re-engage with one another. It could be a great gift on the other side of it.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. I don't have anything to add to that other than it's awesome. Well, maybe I do. Sometimes it can, if we've been going like at 100 for so long, work, kids, stress, all this stuff, and then not having that really loud white noise, dropping down a couple levels can be anxiety producing too.
Absolutely.
We get
addicted to the crazy, right? We get addicted to the neurochemicals, right? Of go.
Yeah.
So there is going to be an adjustment period for all of us.
Yeah, big time. So if any of that, I'll speak for myself even, if I find myself or other people find themselves anxious now because we've geared down a couple of gears, just sit in it. Mm-hmm. It's like, okay, this is an opportunity. It's literally an opportunity to change things that need to be changed. This has made us look at finances, our family time, how intentional we are, how secure our jobs are, all of this stuff. It's really putting a laser beam focus on stuff that before we were just like skirting by and not even thinking about. So
we were able to ignore it before. And that was the one thing that I was going to say, is that kind of in line with what you're saying, is I feel like this is a great time for people because everything has slowed down. We have no choice and no say in the matter. Everything just slowed down. Now is the time where you can learn about the things that actually rejuvenate you as a person. And I think we don't do that nearly enough. I think we often run to, Netflix, wine, and getting my nails done. No, those really don't tend to rejuvenate you as a human.
I love getting my nails done.
Right. I think things like, yoga or exercise or taking walks with your children, the things that you thought you didn't have time for before, now you have time to try them out. And I would highly encourage people in this time to make those things a priority, make discovering your the things that bring you joy and peace a priority. That could be reading the Bible together with your kids, or reading with your spouse, or whatever. It could be many things. And so that's kind of something I think is worth taking the time to do in this weird time of our history.
Yeah. Okay. Well, for folks who want to know more about you and get more of your resources, I know you do blogs and all kinds of stuff. Tell people where they can find you.
You bet. I am. The first place I would direct you is to daveramsey.com/hope. They are just living what they preach. And I'll tell you this, I worked here for a few months behind closed doors. It's something else to be with a company that is practicing what they preach through these uncertain times. So they are just liquidating things, giving away things all across the country. And so the next couple of days, those things are going to be popping up. Just ways for people who are trapped in their house just to love one another, take care of one another, and start planning for tomorrow. Wow. I'm new to the social media world. And so I've lived the last decade completely social media free, but I'm on it now. So I'm figuring it out. And you can find me at John Delony for Instagram and Facebook and all that.
Awesome.
All right. Cool. Yeah. And hopefully this will be the first of maybe a handful of series or whatever. Hundreds. I'm millions. No, of whatever. And we'll, kind of wrap our brains around it. Like, okay, how can we continue to add value and literally like become a trusted resource for couples who are like pulling their hair out, you know, for all kinds of things, or singles or college students or whoever it is, just to be there.
And I just want to say on behalf of the thousands and thousands of college students and young people I've worked with over the last decade, again, what y'all are providing people is just a picture of what this can look like, right? A few people who love each other and are trying to make it work and do it right. And what a gift. And so thank y'all for being out in the space. It's just such a
Thank you.
Awesome, man.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
awesome.
Thank you so much for hanging out.
Yeah.
We'll catch you again later.
Y'all take care.
All right. We'll see you soon, man.
Bye.
Bye.